Good evening, everyone. I'm John OLoughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight being Thursday night, it's time for our Thursday night trio with Professor Hamamoto and usually with George Webb. As a matter of fact, he hasn't missed a single one since we started maybe even a year ago. We've been going quite some time. It's a very successful show. It's actually my franchise player, if you want to look at it that way, because I usually get 3,000 or 4,000 views on the Thursday night shows, and that's far ahead of most of my other shows. So this is a very important night to me every Thursday night, and I really enjoy the conversations. George had a ticketing problem with the airline and had to take a flight that unfortunately conflicts with our show tonight. So he apologizes, and he'll be back next week. Professor Hamamoto is here with us tonight, though, live as usual. And you got your official Kathy Sue lamp going on back there. I got a Kathy Sue lamp myself back here. It's keeping the birds warm as they huddle in the bookshelf there with the air conditioning on. So, they get a little chilly.
Sure.
How
they
are
send
you?
out really nice vibes. It's great to be with you, John. Good to see you. And you know what? The Thursday Trio happens to be my favorite show as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
And listen, we're not totally shorthanded. We have Peter Daszak, the friendly ferret.
Oh, here. Cool. Well, I have a visitor too. I got Klaus.
Klaus.
Yeah, he's got his little. He's so happy with his little Klingon outfit on, and I even put a wig on him so he wouldn't be self-conscious about you know what I mean.
Well, listen, if I get too close to being delisted from YouTube, I got my second strike last week. Just wave.
Hey, congratulations!
All right,
welcome to the club.
One more, and I'm gone. And if you verge too closely into the forbidden words, I'll wave the ferret at you, John.
Do we have a kind of a code lexicon set up yet? I talked to Mark Krulak the other night, and he said that he now says medicine instead of the V word. He says they got medicine, and that seems to not cause an instant crash.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, I had a guest on, and she's not that familiar with YouTube, so she started going off on it, and I could just see that's it. I got a second strike, but I couldn't stop her because it was a live stream.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to sit this. I'll be in the penalty box for another week and a half. But I have an alternate channel.
Okay,
and I see this. Pardon
me?
What's it called? It's Darrell Y. Hamamoto, PhD. If you just look up the same name, it'll show up. And the very same people who are on your chat, they managed to find it. So we have the same audience. There's some cross-referencing here.
That's wonderful. I apologize once again because this is an intense time for me to try to get my book written. I've set myself a kind of a hard stop goal of May 31st to have at least the first draft of the text. And then I'm going to go back, do a second draft, and then we'll be adding some pictures and things like that, so that hopefully we'll have it ready to publish by my dad's Memorial Weekend, the 5th and 6th of June, which is only about 10 days away. So I've been in the books today, to put it mildly, and doing some writing. It's sometimes hard, but sometimes you get you learn something you didn't know before. You're writing, and then you have to look something up, and then all of a sudden things you didn't understand somehow fit into place. And I'm at that point where things are starting to look a little bit more optimistic to me. It's not all just I have to record these a lot of very, very dark events that have happened in my life, simply because I am my father's son. But I wouldn't change that for anything.
Well, John, maybe we can make that the gist of today's conversation, because I think I like talking about writing even more than writing itself. That's one of the hazards, is that you just sort of talk your energies out. And many writers have a superstition. They won't talk about their ongoing projects for fear of just kind of dissipating the energy. So if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I understand. But we could use this opportunity to, because I'm always interested in how writers work, even down to how they organize their workspace, the workflow.
Mhm.
And so, I used to read, this is before I think I even had a word ever published. I used to read the Paris Review collection, Writers at Work. This is what George Plimpton would do in Paris. And I read that religiously just to get an idea of the techniques, the head spaces they get into.
Mm.
And they play a lot of tricks on themselves in order to get new ideas or establish new connections. So my first question to you, if you want to play along with this, if you don't mind you giving away your secrets, what is the most unique mind trick that you got going for yourself, either to stimulate thought or even to just get yourself going?
Oh God, I hate to admit it. I don't want to admit it.
Okay.
It's but I'm going to, just because I love the folks that are in the chat room, and I don't mind peeling back a layer of myself. So the answer is no, Andy, that's not the answer. It's not the Paris Review interviews. See, what you have to understand is I am not a writer. I never set out to be a writer, and I haven't studied how to be a writer. I've done a lot of writing by necessity in my legal career. I mean, but I haven't written anything like a book or anything. So this is like, I'm doing this for you guys. I'm doing this so that everybody can use this example of my father to understand really something about what the world is really like. Because nobody sees through to the deepest levels, except for people that are already so deep in it that if they talk, they're dead.
Yeah.
So this is a very serious situation that's been going on for the length of my life, and certainly back into the early part of the 20th century. And this thing, whatever it is, call it the blob or the deep state, or the Fourth Reich is a reasonable way to look at it, believe it or not, is what my dad confronted in his life, in his career of trying to serve the country and the people of the United States as a public servant. And that story is essential for history, and I need to tell it. I absolutely have a moral duty now that I know. See, when my dad died, my grandfather took over taking care of me, getting me through college and mentored and everything like that. And then I just have had a lot of benefits because of who my father was and who my mother was. And I've just been very, very fortunate. I've got to pass on what I know while I have the power to do it. And so that's why I'm doing it.
Mhm.
Now, the answer to your question, drug dealer for Rom.
Yes, I know. That darn motorcycle guy again.
Yeah, gun your engine if you're a drug dealer for Rom. I say that for George. He couldn't be here to say it himself. That one's for you, George. Well, okay, here's the answer to your question. What is the mental trick that I play on myself to be able to keep going? Chess. Online chess.
What's so embarrassing about that?
I play I'm a terrible chess player. I'm awful.
Yeah.
And I've never chess and I have been enemies for a long time. You know, I used to play chess against a guy that was a jailhouse chess champion. You know, he knew everything. He knew all the stuff, and then so I would play and I would play, and I think I'm getting better. Boom, dead every time. Just kill me. And it was a time of my life when I was having a lot of struggles, and I just said, you know what? I could possibly get good enough to play at his level, but I would have to not do all these other things. It would take forever. Yeah, that's where I play. I play on that stupid. I'm sorry. It's a lovely site. It's called chess.com. And so they start you off at 700, right? You know, you just get an arbitrary number, like you're 700, right? So I started playing, and I'm like, oh, well, I won one, I lost one, you know. But then I started writing, and while I was writing, but this is what I've done, is that I've kind of let myself stop writing, go on chess.com and play a game. And the mental exercise is for me not to get angry when I lose. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that takes my whole mind away from, you know, 1962 Vietnam with the CIA and all of the skullduggery going on, long enough for me to totally refocus. And it's also been good for my mental health, because I've learned to accept the fact that, hey, you know, I am not among the world's great chess players, but nevertheless, it's fascinating to me to as long as it lasts, you know, as long as the game lasts, and I'm getting better. You know, I said to you, they start you at 700, but as I was writing, and I kind of started doing this and just playing and playing and playing and playing, I got myself down to about 630. I was losing and losing and losing, and just still playing. I don't care if I lost or lose. But you know, that took about a month, and then the curve started going back up again. So now I'm respectably above 700, and that makes me feel like, you know, I have accomplished something here, and conquered some, you know, self-esteem issues at the same time. So that's a long answer for you, but that's what I do. I stop writing. I go over to chess.com and I just push play, and boom, I'm off.
No, that's an excellent answer. If I was reading that interview in the Paris Review, Writers at Work, I'd say, wow, that's pretty interesting. Maybe I should try that myself. You know, Gade Talese, he's written any number of really fascinating books. This is before word processing. He would type his manuscripts out and then tape them against the wall and get to the other side of the room and look at it through binoculars, just to like get some kind of distance from it and see how it looks like it's printed. Little things like that are very, very helpful, John. I mean, you know, I thought you might say, well, I pick up the guitar and, you know, play a couple songs and it frees the left side of my brain or the right side. But you do chess, which probably has a similar function. It forces you to use a different part of your awareness or your consciousness.
Yeah,
it takes your mind off of your writing, that's for sure.
I stay away from the music. I stay away from playing music because I'll get myself all wrapped up in that, and you know, do that well. You know, you have to devote some time to it. So I just taking a break from my music to try to get this book done. I've got 52 pages of text so far, and I feel like I'm probably going to get close to 100, and then it'll get bigger when we add some pictures, and then after, you know, the bibliography and all that. So yeah.
Now, did you talk about the part where your grandfather picked up the parental reins there? Is it your maternal grandfather or your father's father?
My father's father, Tom Sr., who was a school teacher and a school principal in Hartford, Connecticut, and he and my dad were quite close. His dad's parents were divorced, and my grandma lived in New Haven, and my grandfather lived in Hartford. But then Grandpa would go. when he retired, he became a snowbird, and so every fall he'd drive down to Florida, to Miami, and stay in the same place every, for a few months, and drive back. And each time he passed through, he'd stop and stay over with us, and he'd always have a suitcase with presents in it for us kids, So he was very popular, very popular. And so yeah, he really worked hard to keep me on the right track after my dad died when I was 18 years old, and he financially supported me going to William and Mary and getting through that with that, a very, very good education. I really learned a lot about government, philosophy, politics, and other things while I was at William and Mary, and it serves me now. It's amazing to think, I've got books over here that I read in 1973 or 4 that are relevant today, but also extremely outdated when they didn't know a lot of the stuff that we know now. It's extraordinary.
Now, was your grandfather a Harvard man, or was he a graduate of William and Mary himself?
No, Grandpa went to Catholic University in Washington, D.C.
Oh, I see.
And yeah, there's my alma mater, as we called it, the famous Wren building in good old colonial Williamsburg, where the college was pretty much separate from the town, but it was nice to walk down and go. You could just walk through. You had free passes to ride the buses and everything. It was pretty cool. I love the colonial times. Of course, I've had my character of John the Fifer, a Revolutionary War fifer, for maybe 20 some years now. I've been doing that with school kids and other groups, but with COVID, of course, that totally stopped. But honestly, I don't seek out trying to do music stuff right now. I want to get this done. It's a real sense of duty that compels me to sit at the thing and write as much as I can, and then take a break.
Well, absolutely. I know that a lot of writers have avocations, or almost verging on the professional level, that's unrelated to their fiction, or if they're writers of history. The good case in point is Vladimir Nabokov, the guy that wrote Lolita and Pale Fire and all these other great pieces of Russian/American literature. But he was, what's a butterfly expert, a lepidopterist or lapis something? He was a butterfly expert, and he had a whole catalog. I mean, he collected them. That was his avocation at the professional level, and he had a whole filing system, 3x5, old-fashioned 3x5 cards. And I read that at Writers and Work, and I said, well, that really makes sense. The way he writes, it's like a he just kind of like shuffles the narrative around like a deck of cards. It doesn't seem to necessarily flow. And he kind of looked at humanity like insects, like specimens. He was looking at humanity under a magnifying, so it kind of makes sense. But he was noted in his time, and I think even today, for being an expert in this particular. So to me, that's fascinating, because when you say, well, I didn't train to be a writer, or you had no professional background in it, that's true for a lot of people. And for me, those are the best writers. Those are the ones that I enjoy, because they're not self-conscious. Oh, I'm writing, I'm doing literature. You know what I mean? They're just like, they just kind of throw it out there. They grind it out, and you can feel the grit of it. And I enjoy it. I don't like a lot of flowery prose. I like, some people may think he's disgusting, but when I was in college, I really got into Charles Bukowski, and he worked for the Postal Service all his life when he wasn't drinking beer, and then at night he would just get in a drunken stupor and just type this just raw prose, and very, very productive. And I think he was at Black Sparrow Press in Santa Barbara. None of the major publishers would go near him because he didn't have professional training, or he didn't know anybody at the New Yorker or any of the big magazines. So someone said, this is really emotionally direct. I think yeah, there he is right there. And he has an interesting background. But anyway, he one of his books was turned into a film. It's called Barfly. Remember Mickey Rourke, the actor? I think it was Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. What a combination. And it's just comes right out of Bukowski. And he was influenced. This is why I like to read writers at work. I want to see who their influences are too. Just like you've got your book, your library, and you're drawing from them. You have your influences, John. So do I. He was influenced by a guy named John Fante, Fante. And he wasn't trained in writing. His father was an Italian immigrant who was a grape picker, up in the Central Valley of California. So he didn't even grow up in an English-speaking. This is John Fante, an English-speaking household, and he wrote some incredibly affecting pieces of Americana that will just make you cry. And it's very direct. No literary tricks. No fancy stream of consciousness, Virginia Woolf, modernist stuff. It's just raw fiction, and I like that. But they don't like to study at the university because it's too easy to understand. They want the hard stuff so that the professor can interpret it for you or curate it for you so you can fully understand it. Because, when I first tackled Shakespeare, that was way beyond me. I only now am beginning to understand it. Just like only now am I beginning to understand the Bible. I think you just have to live life, as you have in order to get to a certain level of understanding and writing and communicating. So the timing's perfect for you, John.
Well, we'll see. I'll get this thing done, and who knows? Maybe I'll get a taste for writing, and I'll say, okay, now I'm going to study all these resources that Professor Hamamoto has turned me on to. But
well, I want to hear about your autobiography through the 60s.
Oh yeah, well,
do you like that genre, 60s memoirs?
60s?
Yeah, the 60s memoirs. Bill Ayers did it.
No, well, that's what I'm writing now. These things happened in the 60s. The Operation White Star in Laos, the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis. I could go on and on. The assassination of Lumumba, just on and on. There are the things in the 60s are what's keeping me stuck right now. I'm in 63 and I can't seem to get past. I keep wanting to get to 64 and 65, but there's all of this stuff that happens in 63, as you know, with the assassination of Kennedy, but also, the assassination of Diem, the president of South Vietnam, on the 1st of November, was the first of what Fletcher Prouty referred to as a coup by assassination.
Right.
And then the second one, of course, happened in our country, in Texas. So we had a coup by assassination as well. And that you have to really study and arrive at an opinion. And I have studied and arrived at my opinion about what happened to President Kennedy. And so that's what I have to go with when I write this. But what I've really learned is that certain people within the Joint Chiefs of Staff were very hip to what was going on, and it's a sad story. But that's I think it's going to make the book very interesting to people when they see what's happening. The best I can to put it through my father's eyes, and he was right there in the thick of it.
Now, it sounds like you're taking a highly historical perspective, John, but one of the stories that you told some months ago, maybe it was even last year, early on, you described, it's still with me because something similar happened to me, only my father expressed his disgust in an open way. But you were sitting together in the, I assume, the family living room, and it was Sunday night, and the Ed Sullivan Show came on,
Mhm.
and the Beatles came on and played. And you said your father just kind of quietly got up and left the room
Mm.
without saying a word. My father said, This is horrible. What is this? This is garbage."
Yeah.
So anyway, what is that? Are you going to have these autobiographical? There, it's kind of telling because it's like a generational difference there. Now, my mother liked them. She thought they were cute because women tend to like, kind of these
Yeah.
cute boys. How about your mother? Was she watching the show too?
Oh, no,
Oh,
no.
she wasn't. Okay. This is Ed Sullivan now. Everybody watched Ed Sullivan on Sunday nights.
Well,
Not
uh,
really.
no, my mom was not a big TV person back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she would watch, but yeah, she she was a little different. My mother was uh, really an artist in terms of her heart, who she really was. She had done some pretty good work with oils before they got married, and some of them were the partly finished ones were still around the house as we were growing up. Occasionally, she would get out a canvas and start doing something with acrylics, but
Hmm.
she never went back to oils, and I always felt that was sad. But at the same time, she raised my sister Lisa to become an artist, and Lisa's a superb artist. She works in watercolors and also metals, and also she makes paper and boxes and little
Hmm.
tools out of metal. She's quite an extraordinary person. Very much likes to stay on her own. She doesn't get involved in my research of my father or anything. She's just content to have a separate life. But Mama raised her and to do the art, and she's done fantastic work. So, and I'm very proud of Lisa.
Great. Now, did she have a space in the house to do her artwork?
Oh yeah, yeah,
She had a studio.
and a nice one of those kind of drafting board things, the big drafting board that's inclined at an angle.
Right, right.
That's where she did her watercolors and everything, taped it down,
Mhm.
taped the paper down or whatever it is.
Yeah, because my mother and my sisters had what they called the sewing room,
Hmm.
where they had the Singer sewing machine, and they made a lot of their clothes from patterns.
Yeah, Mama
Not,
made her clothes. Yeah,
oh, so did she use the Butterfield or butter? Like there was some
yeah.
certain what is it called Butterfield. Some of
Might
the
be
ladies would.
Butterworth, maybe Butterfield,
Butterworth is a syrup, but it's butter
Butter
something.
Butterfield.
It's coming back.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, she had all those patterns, and it was like let's almost like carbon paper of it was printed on these. You unfold them, and it had the blue uh, ink on them where they would cut. And I mean, she did that. She made her own dress for uh, a formal dinner that she and my father went
wow.
to welcome General Victor Krulak when he was assigned the Saxa in February of 1962. And there's pictures of that. I gave one of those pictures to George, which he published in his book called Let's Call Him McDuff. And so we have those pictures of them, him in the tux and she in the dress, the beautiful silk dress that she made. So
Wow.
that's nice. Krulak is quite an amazing character. Yeah, thanks for putting his Wikipedia up there. Very controversial with the with the insiders of the deep state. He was somebody that his paths crossed with my dad a number of times, and he was the Saxa when my dad was the for the first 2 or 3 years, I think from 62 to 64. And excuse me, and it was during that time that Kennedy was killed.
Mhm.
And during that time that, as Prouty tells us, the President Kennedy had sent Krulak to South Vietnam to do an assessment of what was really going on, because Kennedy needed somebody that he could trust, and he trusted Krulak.
Mhm.
But Averell Harriman, with the State Department, and of course, the Harrimans with, that's the Harriman family, right?
Mhm.
He wanted to have his own person go along. So they sent this guy, Mendenhall, from the State Department, and it was the Krulak-Mendenhall mission. And they went, and Krulak went and took helicopters all over the country and talked to all the base commanders and the people in the trenches and everybody, just really to get a good, honest assessment of what was going on. Whereas Mendenhall basically went to the big cities and the big bases and talked to the top people. And the bottom line was that they didn't like each other at all, and they came back with completely opposite reports. So that Mendenhall was saying, that this looks pretty bad. But Krulak came back and said, "Well, no, it's not that bad. I've talked to people out in the field and the commanders, and we can do this. We can win this."
Mhm.
And that distinction between the State Department and Krulak is basically the same division that we've had ever since the World War II, where we developed these people on the more favoring the Soviet Union versus the old Republican conservatives, that frankly would just as soon let Hitler do whatever he wanted to, as long as they could keep making money. That division is still there, and it's still, and that's why I think this study that I'm doing, that really, I mean, here's Krulak, and if you want to learn more about him, this is a good book to do it. It's by Robert Coram, published in 2011.
Mhm.
The Life of Victor Krulak. Brute, of course, was his nickname, and he was one of those bantamweight guys like Napoleon that just took over everything, just a complete bundle of energy. And he was of the opinion that this Vietnam War could be won using the doctrine of counterinsurgency, which he defined. And he was acknowledged as the best expert on counterinsurgency. The problem with counterinsurgency is that nobody wanted nobody wanted to do it. The Army didn't want to do it, and the CIA wanted to do it, but the president had already decided that they were not competent to do it. So he pushed it into the Pentagon, and that's why the office of Saxa was created, the Special Assistance for Counterinsurgency and Special Activities.
Mhm.
So what his idea was to go into the countryside where they grow the food and where the real culture is, and be friendly with the people, and to protect them from the marauding bands of what they call VC, but were really just people that had been dispossessed and needed some food most of the time. This idea of winning what we call, you've heard it's a canard by now, but winning the hearts and minds of the people.
Mhm.
That's what Krulak really believed in. Whereas what the rest of them wanted to do, the Westmoreland and Wheeler and all of the big brass Army guys, they just wanted to go in there with massive troops, kill the enemy, let God sort them out. And those were the ones that won. Not only did they win, but they got control over Krulak's Marines and brought the Marines into that hopeless, search and destroy mission style of fighting that was, what they had thought was the way to win, was to just go out, find the enemy, destroy the enemy, and move on, which was crazy. It just never was going to win. And Krulak knew it wouldn't win that way. That's why he was passionate about trying to get the support for his program, which he called counterinsurgency, which meant political, economic, security, and just health. I mean, just general support for the public, for the situation, for the indigenous people.
Mhm.
Whereas what the CIA was doing through Ed Lansdale was destroying the present culture in order to kind of wipe it out and replace it with something that they wanted to have, which, there's the Phoenix program and Doug Valentine's great work. So
Right.
that's where Krulak is, and my dad is working for Krulak.
Mhm.
He's the planner for these counterinsurgency operations. So it's quite a catbird seat to speak of for my dad, and to the extent that we can suss out what he was doing,
Mhm.
we can understand, where the real problem lies in this country. And the real problem it's the same problem we've had since then. And I think it's simple enough to call it what George Webb calls it, and that's the Hallowell plan, the decision by the CIA to use heroin to finance its operations, and to import that heroin into the United States for sale through people like the Crips and the Bloods, and then the cocaine, all of that. It's everybody. I mean, it's no secret anymore. The CIA is the biggest drug operation in the world, and that is not a secret anymore. But
Mhm.
when are we going to stand up and stop it and say we've got to find a way to stop it? Well, that's what I think we have to do right now. Now is the time to find a way out of this horrible situation where we are now, being inundated once again with all kinds of opiate derivatives and things that are meant to get us addicted and to destroy our culture and our civilization, just like they have done their best to destroy the cultures of so many places around the world: Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Burma. The Southeast Asia did not fare well after World War II at all. Put that chart back up again there, Andy. I didn't get a chance to look at it. That looks interesting. Organization of Treatment of Counterinsurgency Matters in the Department of Defense.
Is there a date on it?
Yeah, I'm looking for a date.
It looks like it's from the 60s. Hmm. Now,
Well,
what did
SAC would be where it says Special Plans and Special Ops Branch. But that is probably either after or before the existence of Saxa, which I think lived from 1961 until about 75 or 6, and it just kind of faded away.
Mhm. Now, where did Krulak get his counterinsurgency concept? Was he in the Philippines wars prior to Vietnam?
Oh God, yeah.
That's where Lansdale started.
Well, yeah, Lansdale, yes, but Krulak was not a Lansdale. They were kind
Well,
of
yeah.
opposites.
Mhm.
And Krulak had been in a number of. I mean, he was in World War One. He was in the Marines when the Marines did the island hopping. He was at Guadalcanal. He was at Okinawa,
Hmm.
and he was a real fighting leader. He was a colonel, I think, by the end of World War II, and then he was reactivated for the Korean War by General MacArthur, because Krulak was the expert in amphibious landings. And they knew they were going to have to do, at least MacArthur wanted to do amphibious landings at Incheon. If you remember the amazing Incheon landing, which was pulled off by Krulak.
Mhm.
and he was a Marine general. So, okay, there's another interesting thing that Andy's found. What's this? The fixed functions of
Saga or Saxa. It's a Saxa.
yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
A function of Appendix A, the functions of the principal sections of Saxa are as follows. Assist the joint staff, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
Unconventional warfare, psychological operations, and Krulak was also a student of psychological operations. He was a person who prided himself on knowing all of the latest literature on how to win wars, how to win battles, and he was much broader in his thought than most of the higher up leaders that were still thinking in terms of big tank battles in Europe, right. And armies of millions of men. They had no interest at all in little bitty things like counterinsurgency or sending out a hit squad to blow up an oil tanker. That was like so tiny Mickey Mouse to them that it just they could not accept the idea that actually going out into the villages, talking to the people, finding out what they needed, and providing what a government is supposed to provide, which is security to them, so they could do their farming and raise their families the way they had for thousands of years before Ed Lansdale and the CIA showed up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll have to read the biography of General or Colonel Krulak, because I don't think they taught unconventional war. I don't know if he went to the Naval Academy or one of the whatever military academy. I'm trying to figure out how he learned, because the U.S. hadn't been in that type of war prior to the Pacific War. Counterinsurgency, guerrilla warfare, jungle warfare, and an amphibious warfare, land and sea. But somehow he seems like he came fully formed to the task by the time he was in Vietnam. I'm trying to find out what kind of training he had. He must have spent a lot of years in the Philippines. That's what I'm suspecting, because there are a lot of different insurgencies taking place against the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Between in the 30s, the early 30s, late 20s, up into the Pacific War, when the Philippines went full force behind the U.S.
Yeah, I know he was in Shanghai for some time. I don't recall from my reading exactly when that was, but the Korean War was certainly that type of an experience. The counterinsurgency mentality. In other words, here we are representing the good people of South Korea, and these evil people, the commies, have come down from the north to take away our freedoms. Right? It's the same thing. We are now going to go out and protect these good South Korean people, because we are the world's policemen and we're the powerful one that can do it. That is the way that we think of it. But what was really going on was a lot of operations and testing out new doctrines. They were using helicopters a lot in Korea for the first time, and they were still kind of experimental. They were not reliable, but people like Krulak, he didn't care. He'd just get in a helicopter and let's go over there. I want to see how this battle's going. They were using. He pretty much pioneered the idea of using helicopters for command and reconnaissance during the battle. And so there's a lot of facets to him that I haven't studied yet. So the answer to your question may be that I haven't hit that yet. But he seems to have been thinking about it for a long time. As I say, he was in World War II doing things like invading islands like Okinawa, and he was also rescued by John F. Kennedy in his PT boat from a boat that he and his commando crew he was a commando leading a commando raid, And unfortunately, his boat had gotten hit a coral reef, and was it wouldn't move, and so they were in a whole lot of trouble. But John F. Kennedy was on the case. He saw him, and he went over there and saved them all. So
This was the PT 109.
Yeah, and this made, I don't know if it's the same boat, but it was Kennedy's boat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this made Krulak a Kennedy man for life.
Oh, I see. Yeah, he saved his life, So
when Kennedy called on Krulak to be the Saxa, he knew he had a loyal guy.
Yeah,
and Krulak was running Saxa according to Kennedy's desires, and that was to prepare reports that would support Kennedy's mission, Kennedy's policy of withdrawing from Vietnam by the end of 1965. So he was working for Kennedy from his point of view as the special assistant for counterinsurgency to support the idea that, yeah, we've come, we've tried, it's not working, let's get out. That report that he wrote became the basis for the Taylor McNamara report, which then became a national security action memorandum that was signed on October I'm just reading this material, so it's October 11th of 1963 that he signed this memorandum that basically said we're going to pull 1,000 guys out by Christmas, and we're going to pull everybody out by the end of 1965. And I just leave that there to say, 6 weeks later, he was dead.
Right.
Because the other people that, did not like the idea of pulling out of Vietnam, and, with all the other reasons for getting rid of President Kennedy that existed, the idea that they were going to lose their opportunity to run the Golden Triangle, the biggest cash cow they've ever seen, through the cover of warfare, which is what they do. They create wars so that they can, ship things back and forth under the cover of, hey, it's a war. Well, that's what they did. And so as soon as Johnson became the president, Krulak was out. And it became Westmoreland and the 500,000 American kids going over there and trying to search and destroy, and it was just one of the great tragedies of our lifetime.
Wow, what an account! That book's going to be incredible because you explained to me, just the uninitiated, the central role, not just in the case of your father, but to the country of Colonel Krulak. But you give the personal relationship forged in battlefield conditions between him and the future president of the United States. But also he's operating at a high policy level, Colonel Krulak. Like, he's in the battlefield and he's crafting a national security memorandum based on his intelligence, based on his assessment. So he's operating on both ends of the spectrum, the personal and the political.
And I think I want to emphasize the passion with which he did everything, because he knew that the mass troop, big division, method was not going to work in Vietnam. Of course, that was one of the big things that MacArthur had told to Kennedy was, don't get involved in a land war in Southeast Asia, and because you can't win it, you just can't. And they knew that. So he knew that counterinsurgency, which he called, the idea of going out and doing for the government the things that the government should be doing until the population becomes, their hearts and minds are one, for the preservation of the government of South Vietnam. And they tried. Kennedy did build up from a couple thousand. He built them up to about 11,000 by the time he decided to pull them out. But they tried, and the forces against it were basically coming from other aspects of our government and other aspects of our military machine from the Pentagon, the ones that wanted to fight the big war so that they get get the stars on their collar, and for other reasons, just because they were very, very anti-communist and wanted to go out and kill as many communists as they could. There's many, many reasons, but military guys are there because they're military guys, and that's what Kennedy was up against. And my dad was drafted to come into that, and what an amazing story it is. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like it's a curse to talk about what I'm doing, because the whole point for me is not to write a book that's going to be a big splash, but just to get the facts down and let people see what my dad lived, through, and also, it is the story of a man of a really iconic character. I think he grew up as a very strict Catholic, was absolutely, a straight shooter from every possible point of view. And when he ran into corruption, he recoiled from it. He couldn't understand why anybody would take that route, and was personally offended by corrupt actions. So that's who he was, and that is, what determined his fate.
Wow. Familiar story. Now we know, I assume that at that point, your father had a different understanding of what government really is, on the ground level. And it seems like from what I've pieced together in your previous accounts, John, is that his career started to go into decline after he came into loggerheads with the Johnson people, right? And we know what happened to President John F. Kennedy. Now, what happened to Colonel Krulak? Did his career stall out, or was he pushed aside, or was he murdered, or what happened?
No, well, here's the story. Johnson, of course, assumes the presidency in late '63, and Krulak is always, trying to get to Johnson, telling him, "Hey, we've got to run this village pacification plan that I've got all written out." And he's got his white papers with him in his briefcases, and he's trying to push these ideas up into the chain of command so that people would, stop doing stupid things like committing, divisions of American troops to try to fight a jungle war, which is crazy. But he was obnoxious. He wouldn't stop. He got himself on the bad side of Lyndon Johnson, and Johnson was a tough cookie. You didn't want to cross Lyndon Johnson. So it was it was early in '64 when he was dismissed as the Saxa, replaced by I think it was Dupuy. I'd have to go back and look, but at any rate, it was somebody that Johnson wanted in there, and those are the big war guys, So that's what changed my dad's fate. Was instead of having Krulak there, which would have been, he would have been working together just fine. Now he's with a completely opposite point of view, and that is when they really got serious about importing troops into Vietnam, and that is when Krulak gets kicked upstairs. He becomes a 3-star, and now he is like the head Marine for the whole Pacific, commandant, not commandant, but the head general. And despite everything that he did to stop it, eventually Westmoreland got control of his Marines.
Oh.
And so he was throwing his Marines into these booby trap firefights, just like he was throwing the Army people, jumping off of their Hueys and into a prepared battlefield. The disasters just mounted, and Marines got killed, and Krulak took it pretty badly. He ended up retiring from the Marines in '68, I believe, and so yeah, that's pretty much what happened. He did not ever stop trying to get the Pentagon to listen to his ideas, because in fact, now that if we look back at it, we realize that that he was right. That was the right thing to do. It's just that there was other forces in play that didn't want to do the right thing.
And it seems that same constellation of forces, including the master of the dark hand, Heinz Kissinger, they're still in play right today, 2021. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, and that's our job. We can't just sleep through this. We've got to get up, stand up, and take care of the future. The future is our responsibility. Professor Hamamoto, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me tonight about my hopefully upcoming book. And
Sounds great.
Long, it'll be published by June the 6th. That's my intention. And
we're
thanks
all looking
everyone for
forward to
being
it.
with us. Great to see you in the chat. I always read the chat after the show, so I'll once we disconnect, I'll be rewinding and watching the chat. And Darrell, what a pleasure it is. I'll see you again next week, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me, John. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.